Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Still working on Doug's reels. Doug's from the Maryland area. He sent me up a bunch of these. He sent me up a whole group of things to test my capabilities. Two pens were in there, Penn SpinFisher 4500, which was the 4th generation, and now the 5th generation with the 450 SSG. SSG is skirted spool graphite reel. This is the 1st generation that they made in China. You can tell that it's not made in the USA because it doesn't say made in the USA, and that's a good way to identify your Penn US reels versus your non-US or offshore manufactured. Typically what it had was a little sticker here, and that sticker typically wears off or is taken off, but regardless, this one started manufacture, I believe, in 2005. This is the 450 SSG. It's a nice inshore fishing reel. You can cast, you can use it in deep lakes, you can use it for surf fishing, depending on where you are. And it's a nice solid reel overall. So we're going to go through this reel. We're going to take it apart. I'm going to show you how to service it if you have it. We'll show you how it's made if you're interested in buying one of these. And see how we can get Doug ready for the next season. Alright, so I start by removing external parts. The external parts get in the way usually when you're trying to do the work on the reel. For example, we're going to go service this the drag washers in this, so you want to make sure you can have access to it. And I think I learned from the other one, there is no screw. I don't believe there's a screw holding that handle in. There's not. And these handles are reversible, so if you wanted to crank with your right hand instead of your left hand, you can do that. I always check because there's some reels that do have that through screw. And if you don't check, well, just beware, because you could be in a situation where you're ripping something up because the screw is holding it in place. Okay, we can put some oil onto this arm. Notice there's a screw on this arm. If you wanted to change the arm, let's say this got beat up or you broke the handle, you don't have to buy the whole assembly. You can just buy the arm, and you can replace it with that screw. I'll put the big parts off to the side. We're going to move down to the case now. This case does not go through the rotor. I always check. This one comes off before the rotor, which is good to know because you can remove the case, and then to remove that axle shaft you're going to have to take the screws out of the crosswind block. And as I take the screws off the side plate, I like to lay them on my table just to make sure that they're all the same length. Now I just completed the one for Doug for the 4500, so I'm going to think that they're all the same length, but I don't assume. If you are a first responder, if you're a hometown hero, if you're an EMT, a fire, emergency personnel, hospital worker, doctor, nurse, hospital administrator, anybody involved in the ERs or the COVID wards, and you have a reel that needs service, well, I'm offering to do that service for free through the end of January. Please contact me on the information on the business card that follows, and I'll be happy to provide you the information on how to get that reel to me. Thank you for all it is that you do. Alright, so the 4 screws are out. We should simply be able to remove this, and we can tell that this one hasn't been serviced in a while. We've got dried grease on the main gear, accumulated puddled grease, and so on. I took the main gear out. There's a bearing in the side plate here. I'm going to soak that. Let it seep in. I'm going to use Reel X here, which is an aftermarket fishing reel oil. And one of the things you can see right away in terms of this versus the 4500 is this is not a brass plate any longer. I will jump to conclusions and say it's stainless, but I'm not sure. But there is some changes in the design, and there's a lot that stays the same between the generations of the SpinFisher. So you're going to take the 2 screws out. They're easier to come out than they are to put in for me. Those of you that watch my videos know that. Again, just check to make sure they're the same, and I put them into a parts tray. The parts tray helps me keep track of the pieces and parts, and also gives me a convenient place to look for them when it's time to reinstall. I'm going to remove the axle shaft now by pulling up. As you pull up, make sure it comes out nice and easy. If you find resistance in there, you may have a bent axle shaft, and that will hurt the performance of the reel. One of the things I've noticed with the Penn lineup is that axle shaft is susceptible to bending. I get a lot of fierce and battles and pursuits in with bent axle shafts. And this is kind of the same setup. That axle shaft is very similar in design and nature, so be aware of it. It's a crosswind block. I just cleared out the channel there. We'll come back and read that later. One of the things you'll notice on the crosswind gear is that you have a pyramid-shaped or a triangle-shaped stud on it, where the older ones just have a round stud. I think that's to give it less resistance as it travels through the crosswind gear. But again, take crosswind block. Take all of the grease off the faces. Use a hard brush. We saw a lot of dried grease, so let's make sure we clear all the channels in the gear. You can use a toothbrush. It's one of these variety pack bristles. And I like to do it on a paper towel so it doesn't get on my desk if I'm flushing out anything that's problematic. All right, that'll go in. We're going to work on that in a little bit. One more thing to do is to take the rotor off. This rotor, I believe, has a 13 millimeter nut holding it in. It also has a counterweight there. If you can't get the wrench on it to turn it, then go over to a deep socket. I think I have a deep socket around here somewhere. And you can use that socket on or off. Once you break it, it's a very easy turn, so you can just kind of turn it around here to get it to come off. Not sure I have the right size socket there. I don't. That's why it's not working. And of course, when you keep too much stuff on your desk, typically what you find is that you have to go looking for it. So, different ratchet, same idea. You want to get that nut off. Now that counterweight, there's a lot of, I get questions from time to time, what does that counterweight do? It balances the weight of the bale arm, and makes it run more smoothly. You can simply pick up on that, and those of you that were watching the other one know right away that you have a different anti-reverse system. In this series, we have a anti-reverse clutch here, as opposed to the anti-reverse dog in the prior series. Okay, 3 screws hold this on. That's a good place to tell you to take pictures along the way. If you're working on the reel, it's easy to get messed up with this, particularly if you take all the pieces and parts off for a good thorough cleaning. And unless you know where they go on the way back in, it's easy to change the orientation of the pieces and so on. For example, notice that there's a little bump here. That's the ramp for the bale trip. Notice that there's a key that comes off here. I believe that these screws are equally spaced, and so it could be easy to not cover that little ramp there on the way out. All right, also notice that you have 2 sides on that anti-reverse clutch, so if you pulled that clutch out and put the plastic side facing you, it would work backwards. Okay, we should have Belly just pull this out now. Remove the trip arm. Remove the collar. Now we should simply be able to pull this up like that. I need a little leverage, sorry if it was off camera, but pull that out. Noticing a little, what appears to be rust there. I don't know that bearing. Don't know if it's stainless or if it's steel, but there is something holding it in. And as much as these reels tend to keep the water out, every now and then it gets in and starts to cause havoc with the metal parts. Alright, we're going to use a cotton swab to get the old grease out. You can see how it's kind of all gunked up there. Folks ask me how frequently you should clean and service your reels. My general feeling on that is annually. If you fish them heavy, go ahead and do a quick service in the middle of the season, just to keep it running nicely. This one I noticed had a little bit of dryness to it in the feel, and as we're seeing here, it did evaporate quite a bit. All right, there's a bearing in the back here. Let's go ahead and make sure we put oil on that. And let's go back cleaning up the pinion gear. Now, I know I got a lot of stuff on my table here, and this is where you want to pay attention. This is why the parts tray works so well. But my notion of what I'm going to do here is just to get this stuff right back in so I don't lose on this one. Okay, just checking. All right, let's do two things before we reinsert. Let's get some grease here on the teeth of the pinion gear. I just checked to make sure all of those were nice and evenly aligned and that there's no breakage there. Let's get some oil onto the bearing. Keep that nice and protected. We can go ahead and put the bearing back into the assembly. Give it a nice turn to make sure everything's working well. Go install the outside now. We have that ramp. We have the collar. And we have the flat washer that went over the top of that. Now again, I'm not certain whether it can be put on a different way, but I did notice that that tag end belongs out. So we're going to go ahead and put that on. So you notice you went to an instant anti-reverse on this one as opposed to the anti-reverse dog on the other one. So what I believe happened with this one is you do not have an anti-reverse override. I didn't see it in here, and that's a takeaway. That's the folks that do the engineering on these thought that it would be either too difficult or too expensive to do the override, so they eliminated it. They did that on the Fierce, on the Battles, on the Pursuits. They all went to this anti-reverse clutch, and they eliminated it. Now, a lot of people like to fish with the ability to backpedal a reel, and if that's what you like to do, well, you're not going to be able to do it on this reel. So if you're considering buying it, then that would be a downside for the observation. I want to clean the shoulder on this. There's two little bumps there. They fit flat here, so you got to align that properly. Then you should be able to ride it into that collar there. I like to take my Bale assembly. I like to give it a good shot of penetrating oil into the seams. And then work that free. Generally speaking, penetrating oil is not a lubricant. It does have lubricating properties, but it's more cleaner. I just like to do that to flush it out. There's only springs in here, and you do not need to remove the bale unless the bale is broken as part of your general servicing. What you do need to do is remove old grease, and that's what we have here. We just have a bunch of old dried grease, which is probably why this reel was kind of talking to me while I was testing it. Just needs to be cleaned up. You saw it come off in chunks below when we were working on the bottom of the case there. And if you want to use the penetrating oil as a degreaser, go right ahead. Just give it a little bit of a coat. Continue to do the same. That'll help break anything that's coagulated there. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing that we did up top there. We're going to grab that bristle brush, clear out the teeth, check the teeth while we're doing that. Make sure that they're uniform and that they're not chipped or cracked. And you can see the old grease is coming out on my paper towel here. So, all right, we're cleaned up there. Piece more there, that's all cleaned. So let's go ahead and put the rotor back on. We've cleaned underneath, we've checked that. We've kind of done the lubrication thing. We noticed that this came out in a traditional set, so it goes back clockwise. And I like to hand tighten these because sometimes this initial threading is not true, and you don't want to cross strip these. All right, I'm going to go back to my set my socket, bring that in. That's a little socket set I've had forever. I think there's something to be said about having a quality tool and just paying for it. It's an SK set that I bought early on to work on cars, and it's always done me well. Okay, we have a case that we've cleaned. I just noticed there's a little bit of something hanging on the sidewall there, so let's get rid of that. And we can go ahead and reinstall all of this then. We're going to start by the crosswind block, or gear rather. I don't know why I keep calling them one the other. Get the gear. And again, this is a workhorse, so you want to get the teeth well lubricated. You don't have to get it on every tooth, but you want to get inside the gear there because that's going to ride on the case and the stud. And then you want to get it on the face here where the block is going to ride. When you go to do that, put the stud down in orientation so that it is at the bottom of the case, like you're seeing here. And we can go ahead and get the crosswind block in. You want to get grease into that cavity that we cleaned out and along that face where it's going to ride. Then you want to set that over that stud. Keep it to the bottom, that way you're going to be able to insert the axle shaft after you put the main gear on. We're going to take the main gear, get good grease onto the part that's going to drive the crosswind gear, and get it into the teeth that are going to intersect with the pinion gear, and get it onto the front place here, which is going to ride in the other bearing. Put that grease aside for a moment. Just install that main gear in. This is an example we were talking about when I went to China. I don't know what this metal is, but it just accumulates and it pits. Right now we've got pitting going on. All right, we're going to take our brush and put a light coating of grease onto the axle shaft. Those of you that watch it know that I tell you that when you come through here, it's a tight tolerance. You put too much on, it just pulls it off. Right down, align the flat side of the blade with that crosswind block. Grab your little flat piece. Trying to find my pin, line those holes. Now, last time I was doing this on the 4500, I put a little bit of grease onto the tip of my screwdriver, and that enabled me to hold the screw. But those of you that know me and small screws and hand size don't always make it work pretty. But those of you that know me know that eventually we do get it. So patience and persistence is just as much a part of real repair as some of the more mechanical stuff. All right, we'll do that again. Seems to be working. This is why you try and keep that carrier low, because I'm bumping the head of that screw against the main gear at the moment. There you go. Just had enough clearance. Alright, once you do that then, give it a turn, make sure everything's working properly. And I'm just going to pause the video for a moment. Okay, so I had to answer a phone call, so life goes on, right? Alright, so let's go ahead and put the assembly back. I did take my glove off. I'm not going to go re-glove now at this point. Everything's done. We did oil our bearings on both sides, so we can put the case back on. Don't force anything. There we go. You usually get a nice snap on the cases when they're seated properly. And the 4 side plate screws that we know are the same size, so we don't need to do anything with that. You know the reel is working good by the spin we gave it before, so it's just time to tighten this up. Then we'll go up top and service the drags. So if you like what you're seeing, I do this, try to post daily. I would ask you to subscribe, and if you do subscribe, please hit the notifications so that you don't miss any of the models I do. I work on all kinds of reels, whether spinning, bait casting, low profile bait casting, inshore ocean, trolling reels, conventional reels for boats. Kind of work on them all. So if you're interested in seeing how the mechanics of fishing reels come together, then I would ask you to subscribe to my channel. If you have a question about a particular reel, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you're considering buying one or something, and you want to know maybe specs or something, or performance or history or the like, then leave it in the comments section. I'll try and give you an answer if I know the answer. And also, if you have a reel that needs to be worked on, well, first of all, if you're a hometown hero, if you're a first responder, we talked about earlier, well, just contact me and I'll give you the information. But if you're everybody else and want to have a reel service, well, I do that by mail, and if you contact me, I'll give you the information on the repair services. That's a whole lot smoother than it was. All right, last thing up then is to check the drags out. I know when I worked on the other reel that we just did, they had new drag washers in there, so let's see what we have here. This is a stack that has HT100 drag washers in it. Yep, we're good here as well. The only indication here is that we've got some top surface grease that's not unusual. This takes the brunt of all of the water and spray. That's the weak side, if you will, of a top drag system, is that as you're cranking, all the line is coming onto the reel and it's throwing the water off, and the water cups in here under this cap. So even though the manufacturers try to make that pretty watertight, it is not, and that does work its way in over time. All right, I put the first of the fabric washers in. You got 2 round or keyed washers. They're kind of a square in the center. They go on each side of the octagonal one. That's not octagonal, it's heptagonal. But is it 1, 2, 3? No, it is octagonal. There you go. All right. Looks like a stop sign. All right. That one goes in the middle. The round one goes up top. The round clip goes in the groove. That's all you have to do. Now, if you had a drag washer that, like what we just took out there, and it didn't have the grid pattern on it, in other words, it showed extreme wear, then you would want to go and replace that again. If you have flat sides on it, you probably want to replace it. Sometimes you'll find out on the older models, these get pressed in and they dry, particularly some of the older leather ones. You certainly want to replace them. In that case, you may have to replace not only the metals, but you may have to replace the fabric ones as well. Just testing to make sure that it's fit, they are seated properly. Then I back it off, and then the final test. Then just give it a ride. Make sure that the bale is operational, right on the high spot, of course. There you go. You want to test that because that's where we took the collar off and we had that trip lever sitting there. So you want to make sure that that works properly, and it does. So Doug, we're down to the last one or two. I think I have a Penn Model 9 left, and I'm not sure if I have another Ambassador left, but pretty soon we'll be all done with those, and we'll be ready to get you back out there, ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.